Hey there, welcome back to Reddit XO, the best channel for Reddit cheating stories. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification for more stories like these. Now, let's get into the video. Found my girlfriend was cheating on me with a close friend, so I had him arrested and ghosted her. Part 2. While I was gone, I requested Catherine to remain with my parents until I returned, and I urged my father to arrange for one of the local security firms to install cameras and an alarm system after receiving permission from the police, so that the crime scene would not be ruined. When I got home, I went through my usual "Oh my God, I can't believe this has occurred, and why would someone do this?" routine. After thoroughly searching every room, discovering that the goods I had stolen were missing, and making a police complaint, I had the security company's representative walk Catherine and me through how the cameras and alarm system operated. Then came the inquiry I had been anticipating. What happens if we are doing business and do not want it recorded? She pretended to be bashful when she asked this inquiry, but I understood precisely why she was questioning me. He informed us that this was a common concern, and we were taught on the home computer, if we wanted to do things without being filmed, how to disable the recording for certain cameras, so that we could preserve her modesty. As I was leading him out, I asked him whether, if the cameras were turned off, a notice might be sent out as a security measure. He came back in and walked me through the process of setting up email alerts before leaving. Fantastic! All I had to do was sit and wait. At this point, I asked r/legal advice for assistance with couples law in my country. I wanted to make sure that my forthcoming plan was legal and that I wouldn't be compelled to give Catherine any money or equity, since I didn't know whether we were considered a de facto couple or not. As the single recipient of Rachel's inheritance, I didn't want to be left with any unpleasant surprises in which Catherine might take any portion of the fortune away from me. Shout out to those guys and gals there for putting me in touch with a great lawyer who assured me that because we hadn't been living together long enough to be classified as de facto, and because I was paying all the utilities on the property she was living in and didn't pay rent, she had no legal standing to make a financial claim against me. To be sure, he wrote out what I thought was a very solid legal document, just in case there was any legal problem. The following week, my boss approached me and offered me a promotion to return to the city and run the team that I was a part of, which meant I wouldn't have to travel as much and be in one place as much, and that due to the success of being in my hometown, they were considering having 3 to 5 representatives spend 1 to 2 weeks in the larger surrounding towns, including my hometown, as a part of my team. I said yes and started the process of starting my transfer, which would take around 6 weeks. Perfect. I had more than enough time to collect all of my proof. When I returned to my hometown the next week, I started to put the remainder of my plan into action. I requested Harry to allow 1 week of vacation for Catherine for the next 2 weeks. I planned to take her and a few of friends on a retreat before making the greatest choice of my life for the second time. He sprang up and gave me a big embrace, complimenting me for being brave enough to try again. I embraced him back, but not in the manner I believe he envisioned at the moment. He agreed and reserved the whole week for me. I requested him not to tell anybody, since I wanted to keep it as a surprise as possible. I knew it would spread like wildfire across the workplace, but that was my intention. That night, I informed Catherine that I had booked her and 2 friends a week's stay at a tropical spa resort, with all costs covered. No questions asked, she chooses 2 buddies and returns to the greatest surprise of her life. She yelled like a child who had just been informed that she could have all the chocolates in the store. I then told her that I was going to spend the following week in the city, preparing for a large client who was one of my biggest accounts, and needed some people on my team to help before flying out the following week, and I wouldn't be home until the Monday she was leaving, so I wouldn't be able to see her, which seemed to disappoint her, but I told her it would be worth it when she returned. What I didn't tell her was that I'd opted to take a 2-week vacation to the other side of the country, mentally preparing myself for that was going to explode the minute she set foot on the aircraft, and relishing my first taste of freedom. 2 weeks later, on a Sunday, I flew back and started driving home. When I arrived, I did a fast pass by my home and, sure enough, Harry's vehicle was there. I parked a little farther back, like I had done the first night I had captured them, and checked the cameras. I'm fast asleep in my bed. To be honest, it was no surprise, since I had often filmed them doing this over my 2-week absence. I immediately made my first call to the police, which was blocked by my caller ID. I told them that I was one of their neighbors, and that I had seen someone hanging out in their car in the alley behind my house, occasionally passing something through windows to passing cars while also looking into my yard, and that I was concerned that they were dealing drugs or planning to break into someone's property. I provided them his license plate number and a description of him. They stated someone will be there in a few minutes, so I thanked them and hung up. I immediately contacted Catherine and told her I was about 10 minutes away and that I knew she was leaving the next day but urgently wanted to surprise her. Looking back at the clip, I giggle at the noise I was shocked I didn't hear. Harry was half-dressed and dashing out the back door to his vehicle in a matter of seconds. I couldn't have wished for a more ideal scenario at that time. As Harry was driving away, one of the police vehicles turned the corner behind me, spotted Harry driving away quickly, and pursued him. She fell asleep again after pulling in, greeting a happy Catherine, and performing the couple of things. I, on the other hand, couldn't get a wink of sleep. Her and her companions were packed into a vehicle the following day. I had to wait a few hours after they drove gone before I could start carrying out my plan. I phoned a removalist acquaintance and apologized for the late notice, but I wanted my home packed and relocated on Friday. After we agreed on a time, I informed him that he would need to transport some boxes to a storage facility, which he said would not be a problem. Then I started packing Catherine's things. Later that day, I received a call from the police asking me to come and identify some goods that had been captured from a suspect the night before and matched the description of the items I had reported stolen. I smiled to myself, pleased that my plan for Harry had come to reality, and answered that I will be there immediately to pick it up. Of course, when I arrived, some of the goods were still missing, owing to the fact that they had to be at his home and they hadn't checked there yet. The town was bustling with news at this point. My hometown's events don't remain hidden for long. Harry was shamed and swiftly dismissed for his possession of narcotics and stolen goods, and our respective supervisors had tendered a formal apology to me on behalf of the firm earlier in the week. That night, I went to my parents' home and informed both my and Rachel's parents what had occurred, omitting important specifics, and that I was going back to the city after getting promoted. But Catherine wouldn't be there. They were unhappy at first because I hadn't told them what was going on, but they were relieved that I was handling things maturely and hadn't gone to their level, even if they didn't agree with ghosting Catherine. But I went home after a few beers, laughter, and tears. After a hectic week of coordinating cleaners for the next week, real estate to put my property on the rental market, and numerous other responsibilities at my hometown's office, I packed some items into my vehicle and traveled to my parents' house, where I bid farewell before the journey. I went to Becky's residence before leaving. Becky had been one of Rachel's closest pals since she was a child. She was the only other person who knew what was going on, sans the information about Harry. I couldn't have organized things as fast as I did without her assistance. I handed Becky a thick manila folder with all of my proof of her infidelity, as well as a letter and a few other legal paperwork from my attorney indicating that she was ordered not to contact me and instructions on how to get her items at the storage facility I had leased out. I said my goodbyes and traveled back to the city. I awoke on Sunday to multiple missed calls, voice messages, and text messages. Catherine had returned home early after being warned of something going on in town, only to discover an empty house with a for rent sign out front. She had gone to my parents' house, freaked out, and they had locked the door on her the instant she responded, causing her to ring everyone until she was reached by Becky and informed that she had a package for her. I was informed she didn't take well to that, which I already knew based on her several furious emails and phone calls accusing me of setting up Harry, being deceptive, and so forth. I was afraid she'd show up at my front door, but nothing happened. I'm writing this for you, dear reader, 5 weeks after I left and was promoted. Granted, it's lengthy, and it took a few rewrites to get it down from my original 14 pages, which is nearly twice the length of this narrative, but I believe that most of what I stated was relevant enough for the story. Edit. Due to the passages referring to Harry. Several users of the subreddit have messaged me and indicated that this narrative would be better suitably put in r/nuclear revenge. I had considering it at first, but after reading some of the tales, I thought it was a little too mild in comparison to others. In any case, I'll be linking the article there. Thank you to everyone who has left a remark. Please accept my apologies for not responding to any messages. I had a fairly stressful 24 hours or so.